What does it look like to build something that lasts beyond you? As leaders, we don't just shape the present, we prepare others to lead what's next. And that's our focus on today's episode of the Slingshot Group podcast. I'm Tim Foote, CEO of Slingshot Group, where we help you build remarkable teams through staffing and coaching. And for today's episode, I'm joined by my friend, Dave Ferguson. Dave is the lead pastor of Community Christian Church and visionary leader of Exponential. He's passionate about helping leaders multiply the mission, and he's lived it out across decades of ministry. So Dave, it's an honor to finally have you with us on the Slingshot Group podcast. Welcome.
Hey, Tim, it's good to be here with you. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Lived it out across decades, that emphasis on decades.
Yeah.
I had somebody yesterday call me a seasoned warrior. I was like, what the heck is happening?
Oh, that's the seasoned warrior. That's impressive.
Is
you
that
don't
good?
look like.
I don't know. I think that was the same as decades. I think it's like, you are old now.
Yeah, no. Wise. You're wise, Dave.
There we go.
Wise.
We'll go with that. Hey, it's good to be with you, Tim.
Well, it's great to have you with us. And it's an exciting time for you, Dave, because at time of recording, we're getting close to a major leadership transition coming up at your church. You'll soon be moving from lead pastor to co-founding pastor at Community. But firstly, can you walk us through how you and your team discerned this moment of transition?
Well, I mean, in some ways, I think it started, first of all, with a conversation between myself and my wife's, with Sue. We are good friends at Catapult, Todd Milby. We went and did a life plan with them, and we were thinking this was the next step, and it was time to make this move. And we could get into it for a variety of reasons, but I think during the course of that kind of solidified it and kind of gave us a plan. And then as a part of that too, and then kind of in conjunction with that, I was also talking to my brother John. And if you know John, I mean, we've started the church. We were together. We were part of the 5 initial friends that made up the staff from way back. So we've done the whole 30-some year run together. So it really was in conversation. Yeah, in the conversation with Sue, and then also John going, okay, I think it's time for to go ahead and make this move.
Mm.
And then after that, of course, to the lead team, and then after the lead team, then to our elders, and from there.
Yeah, the whole process. I heard you say in a video about the transition. We believe in apprenticeships in all roles at Community, even the lead pastor role. And this is the type of culture you and I both know that we need to have in our organizations. What are some of the do's and don'ts you'd offer for leaders who want to build a true culture of apprenticeship?
I think whenever you're trying to build a culture, I think at the core of a strong culture are certain values. And so for us, if you want to build a culture of apprenticeship, I mean, the value that you get in Matthew 28, where Jesus says, go and make disciples. And as you look across the Gospels and you see how Jesus made disciples, it was, life on life, really. And Dallas Willard's the one who used the word, I think, the phrase, and I kind of borrowed it from him, apprenticeship. And because it implies both, I think, the equipping of somebody both to know, but also the doing. So both the knowing and the doing part, that's kind of apprenticeship. So there's at the core of it are values, but then if you think of it in terms of expanding concentric circles, there's the value of apprenticeship, but then there's also what I call the narrative, which is the language and story. And so you're constantly, and that language, even of apprenticeship, I think as you bring it up, I think people probably lean in, that's a little different. And I think it begins to mean something to people. And so you use unique language whenever you're trying to create a culture, but then also the storytelling. And I mean, if we have time, I could tell you lots of stories of apprentice leaders that I've had, or people we've apprenticed into various roles, and now including a lead pastor role. But then also the last thing is the behavior. So you have to hold the values, use the language, tell the stories, but then lastly, you actually have to do the stuff. And do the stuff of apprenticing other people. If you do that, then there's kind of a congruency between what you believe and what you say and what you do. And when that happens, when you get that congruency, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then you get a strong culture. And I'm convinced that at the core of every great movement is some kind of form of apprenticeship, both candidly for great evil or great good, is some kind of form of apprenticeship. And that's part of the reason we value it, because we see the church as movement, and we want everyone to have an apprentice.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dave. We'll talk a lot in coaching about what are the trophies in your trophy cabinet of ministry. You know, those things that you hold dear in your heart. And I look back on my years of ministry, and it's always the stories of people growing and growing into new leadership roles. And you talk when it comes to apprenticeships about actually doing the behavior. So maybe share probably your favorite story about apprenticeship throughout your career.
A favorite story. Increasingly, my story with Ted is becoming a favorite, but probably my favorite story today. And it's kind of like, this is a little bit of a tough question, because it's kind of like asking a coach, who's your favorite player? You know what I'm saying?
Sorry. Yeah, I
But
do.
I'll give you a favorite story.
Yeah. Hey.
Um, yeah, I mean, Troy and Janet McMahon were people who were on our team at Community for about 15 years, I think. Troy was there almost the very, very beginning, and was working for General Mills, and came to my small group. He was one of my apprentice leaders in my small group, and he's one of those guys, when you walk into a room, he just kind of takes up the room. He's a big guy, lots of energy, a lot of charisma, fun to be around. So very quickly, in a small group setting, he moved from that apprentice phase into the leader, and I continued to coach him. And then later on, he moved to a place where he was actually coaching leaders. So then when we first went to multiple locations, so this goes back a number of years now, when we went multi-site, I remember Troy and I were sharing a milkshake, and that's when I kind of said, "Hey, dude, we got this opportunity to do this thing. We're going to start a second location." And I said, "I'd really like for you to think about being the campus pastor." And then I also said, "And I want you to raise your own support." and
Here's what you get to do.
and Troy said yes to both. And he was kind of on the fast track at General Mills, so he was doing very well, but said yes to that. So he started a location for us, then actually started a second location for us. A few years after that, came to me and said, "Hey, I think I want to go plant a church." And that's always that moment where it's kind of like, it's because he was a good friend, still one of my best friends. It's one of those moments where it's kind of like good news, bad news. And I was like, okay. And we ended up sending him and about 20 people to Kansas City. They planted that church. That church has now gone to multiple locations. They've actually started 4 networks, and I think helped plant, I'll guess on the number, it's somewhere in the number of 50 to 60 churches in the Kansas City area. And what him and Janet have done is just, it's amazing. But it's fun to think back when, he was first my apprentice leader, and he was also, working at General Mills, and it's just fun to see that kind of thing happen.
Yeah.
So that's a
Well, one
favorite
of the
story.
That's great, and it highlights one of the many things I love about you, Dave, as I've gotten to know you, is you hold things so loosely, and you truly walk the walk of expanding the kingdom. And of course, the word you use for it all the time is multiplication, which I think when you go back to how you felt about walking away from your last team meeting as lead pastor at Community, you already know what God's called you to. And we say such an important part of succession is the outgoing leader being called to their next. And it's so obvious now in your work with Exponential as visionary leader. I mean, just being at Exponential this year and seeing the incredible impact, and how God's great enterprise in the world, which is a local church, is being expanded and multiplied in amazing ways. You spent much of your life helping churches and organizations embrace multiplication. And right now, the need for new churches and new leaders feels more urgent than ever. What are you noticing about the organizations that are doing multiplication well right now?
Oh, great question. I think the organizations that are doing multiplication well right now, well, I can give you a handful of things, and you cut me off. One is, I think they have this, what I would call, multiplication thinking. They know how to dream big. In fact, I would suggest that most of them, and it usually is either a leader or a team of leaders, they have a dream that's so big it makes them dependent on God. Because I think what a lot of us, we have a dream that I think maybe I could pull that off, and we ask God to help us pull it off. But they actually have a dream that's so big they know they can't pull it off. Does that make sense? And because of
Yep.
that, I think it forces you to begin to look outward and go, okay, who do I need to apprentice? Who do I need to train? Who do I need to equip? Who do I need to serve? And then send out in order to make that kind of dream happen. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So I mean,
Dave, was it
go
was
ahead.
it John Haggai that said, "Dream something so big that's doomed to fail, lest God be in it"?
Yes,
Somebody, yeah.
that sounds about right. Yes,
Mm.
I a friend of mine, Bishop Oscar Miru from Nairobi Chapel. I remember one time we were together, and he was a part of a new thing. We were doing this kind of like trying to, okay, what's the next dream? And I remember he said, "I want a dream so big that it makes God sweat."
Mm. I'm not sure about the theology of that, but it's
Yeah, I don't
impressive,
either,
right?
but it was still a pretty impressive dream. I'm going, okay, that's pretty big. So
Yeah.
I do think that's one thing. I think dreaming big like that, that forces you to look outside. I think secondly, I'd say permission giving.
Mm.
They have a permission giving kind of culture where I like to talk about the four most important letters of the leadership alphabet are I, C, N, U, and that you actually have what we call these I, C, and U conversation, and you give
Mm.
people permission to be something they couldn't be on their own. I think
Yeah.
that's a part of the culture. Um, I
I
think
see
it's
in you
also
reminds me of a coaching competency we've used at Slingshot Dave. We call it lobbing forward or going north on someone, and it's verbalizing what we see in them and what we believe is possible for them.
say that again. Lobbying forward,
Lobbing forward
uh
or
huh,
going north.
or going. Oh, that's good.
Mm. Yeah.
I will probably borrow that. Thank you. I think another thing is they also there's an ongoing, consistent kind of in some way commissioning these people. The churches that don't get multiplication, they might have someone who's a co-leader, they might have someone who is an associate, but they kind of stay stuck in that role. Those that are good at multiplication, what they'll do is no, they're going like, no, I think there's even greater thing. And they will commission those people, they'll send them out, they'll release them to become everything God meant for them to be. I think that's really important. And maybe a last thing, I think they also have a kingdom scoreboard. And so instead of counting how many people are coming to my thing, they count how many people am I sending out to do God's thing. There's a different way they measure success. So instead of saying how many people are showing up my ministry or my small group or in church on Sunday, they'll like, okay, how many leaders have we sent out? How many churches have we planted? Even like with Troy, I'm like, the thing I love about Troy and what they've done is, hey, they've started 4 networks and like 50 some churches there. That I mean, for me, that's kind of how I keep score, whether I'm winning or not. Does that make sense? And it's
Oh
happening
yeah.
through.
Is there a difference, Dave, to how they see challenge?
Oh, interesting. Ask it a different way. What are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about perhaps at time of recording, there's all kinds of things going on nationally, internationally. We don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. I mean, we never know. We live with uncertainty. How do people that do multiplication well see challenge?
I think they see challenge in terms of it's in terms of other people, and in term, I guess I'm having a hard time getting on the problem side of it because I hear challenge is problem. I'm already jumping to the solution side of it,
Yeah.
and I think the solution for whatever the challenge is, they see it through people. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Whatever the obstacle is that's keeping the mission from being advanced, whatever it is that's keeping Jesus from moving, the mission from moving forward, they see the solution in terms of other people. So I'm not sure. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe people who value multiplication, they don't really see challenge as much as they see opportunity through other people.
Yeah. And opportunity to innovate is what I imagine too.
And I think through those.
Also, here's another question. You're getting curious, Tim, now, Dave. Do you see a difference in organizations that are multipliers between the building phase and the scaling phase?
Um,
Because you've built things, you've scaled things. Is there a difference?
yeah. I mean, if I had it to do all over again, though, I think the scaling phase never stops. In this regard, it doesn't get noticed until later on. But I think there was probably like the first 9 years of community, we never planted a church. That's regrettable to me. And some people would go like, "Oh, that's the building phase." No, that was stupid. um, I think there was some scaling happening in Trends because we were apprenticing leaders and apprenticing coaches. But I think we took too long. And I think what happens sometimes is I think the scaling is the internal multiplication that needs to happen. I think that can be the building phase, and that's fine because you're maturing into it. But I think for a lot of folks, myself included, we stretch out the building phase longer than it needs to be because we're going, no, 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 we need those leaders here. We need those dollars here. I need a bigger structure here, those kind of things. And I don't think it should ever be an either or. I think we ought to be constantly, while we're doing that, we're developing other leaders. And God's going to reveal, okay, in the process, which of those people should stay and which of those people should go. And it might be of interest to your leaders, whether they're business leaders or church leaders, but in the church context, those churches, Warren Bird did the research on this, those churches that have a vision for multiplying 10 churches or more versus those churches that are going like, no, I'm going to use your phrase just for contrast. I'm just in the building phase. I'm building something here. They actually grow significantly faster than those who are just trying to build something right here. In fact, the growth in churches that say, no, I'm not really planning on planting churches, there's almost, on whole, is almost no growth versus there's an average of 10% growth, according to Warren Bird, in those who say we want to plant 10 churches or more. Does that make sense? So consequently, when you're thinking about scaling the whole time, when you're thinking about multiplying the whole time, you actually end up growing more than when you're trying to actually just grow.
I think too, Dave, it comes down to a vision issue. And vision, when we think about it, is stewardship. When we dream big, God shows up. You know,
Yeah.
we grew our family through adoption. And so we've been involved a lot in adoption communities. And it's
Yeah.
always amazed me to see how God shows up with his provision as families get involved in adoption, because God's heart is in the middle of placing children in forever families.
Yes.
Likewise, he is spreading the gospel across the earth. So if our vision is big for multiplication, he's going to show up and we're going to grow. You mentioned, when we were talking about building and scaling, about how we're developing leaders. And that's obviously a huge passion area for us at Slingshot, because it's the supply to the work we do in staffing. The demand continues to go up. The supply, concerningly, we're seeing is going down, and we're having to talk a lot to ministries about calling people into ministry, developing leaders. We had your friend Mac Lake on the podcast recently. We've had him a couple of times talking about a lot about leadership development. I love the different take you have on leadership development around hero making that actually complements a lot of the work that Mac does as well.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard you say often, we're always looking for more leaders. Talk a little bit about your passion for hero making and how that plays into leadership development.
In some ways, I think it's synonymous. I mean, I think leadership development and hero making are the same thing. And we talked a little bit before about culture, and one of the ways you make culture is through language and story. And I think in some ways, I love that and there actually I wasn't the originator of it, but coming up with that phrase of hero making, it kind of causes people to lean in and go, "Oh, what are you talking about?" Because I think most people think they know when you say discipleship, they think "Oh, I already know about that." And if you talk about leadership development, again, people, "Oh, I kind of know about that." But if you say hero making, they go, "Oh, what's that?" And it kind of creates this new opportunity for you to infuse new meaning into something that's kind of actually very familiar. A friend of mine, Oystein Yerme, who is a friend through Exponential Europe, he's in Bergen, Norway. He said this. He said, "Whoever owns the language owns the paradigm, and whoever owns the paradigm owns the future." And I think one of the things about hero making, it's a different kind of language that makes you think about leadership development differently. Oh, so I'm not the hero, they're the hero. And so what do I do again? And you give them the 5 practices, and then, and that creates a different future. And I think that's one of the things I think that's powerful. But speaking of Mac, Mac is he's brilliant at that stuff.
Oh, and you are too, Dave. I know you're not going to say that, but I'm going to say it. Your five principles. I mean, you talked about it. You've already talked about it naturally because it's who you are: multiplication thinking, permission giving, disciple making, gift activating. Maybe just drill in for a minute on the gift activating part, which is going back, I think, to the lobbing forward and the going north a little bit.
I think the gift activating. Well, I'll give you an example. So, a guy who was in my small group, Rick Bole. He actually came. Rick's a guy who loves the special needs community, and he's in my, and probably one week out of three, he'll, whatever, no matter what we're talking about, he'll bring that up and he'll get teary eyed, and he's passionate about it. He worked with Capernaum, which is Young Life's special needs ministry, was on their national board. He comes to an Exponential conference here in Chicago. The closing speaker, James Meeks, gets up and he says, "Hey, if you are just available, God will use you. You don't have to go to Bible college. You just have to be available. You don't have to, have a building. You just have to be available. You don't have to have money. You're just available." And so Rick's taking this all in. And then in the closing session, he goes forward and asks for people to pray for him and for him to be commissioned. We're asking people to plant churches. And then he comes up to me afterwards and he's like, he said, "If you're available," he said, could I plant a church for the special needs community?" And I'm like, "Let's do it." So anyway, he goes through our micro church training. This gets to the gift activating piece. So we take him through kind of the whole each of the five practices of hero making. But in the fourth practice, which is what we call gift activating, which the practice of that, the tool for that is really commissioning. So he's sharing with our small group on a Tuesday night, like, "I've been going through the training. I'm going to do it. I'm going to start a church for the special needs community." And for a lot of folks in the special needs community, I mean, it's hard for them to go to church because one member of their family, I mean, if they have special needs, will act out in a way that makes other people kind of look, or makes them feel uncomfortable. And so he's telling all of us this on a Tuesday night. And so we have him sit on the coffee table, and our whole small group makes a circle around him, and we lay our hands on him. And basically we said, "Okay, this is your ordination, Rick. We are going to commission you right now as your friends on mission, and we're going to pray for you. And this is like your ordination." And we did right there in his living room on the coffee table. And we all prayed for him, and we sent him out. And so now every Sunday night, at 6:00, he has a group of somewhere between 75 and 100 folks that meet in the gym just over my shoulder here. And it's awesome. It's an awesome thing. And I think that's what that gift activating is, because there's a passion and a gift. He's really brilliant at it, that gets fully activated. And so we just kind of, that was our kind of way of, I don't know if you call it formal, but formally kind of commissioning him, like, "Yeah, you go get him."
That's a great story. And Dave, I could talk about hero making all day with you because it is so, so needed. And I've seen you talk about it across a dinner table, and I've watched you talk about it on the stage at Exponential in front of thousands of people. Yet we're watching a generation of seasoned leaders age while fewer young leaders are stepping in, although it's hard to believe when you're at an Exponential conference. So keep doing it. But are there warning signs, Dave, that you're seeing when it comes to the future of church leadership?
Well, I mean, yeah, and one of the warning signs is everything we've been talking about, and I see this a lot in a lot of senior leaders, where a couple different things. One is where there is no apprenticeship happening. So and again, I want to be really careful, because I think it's the church that really prepared Ted for where he is and going to step into this role of lead pastor, because he started as a leadership resident. And as a leadership resident, then he did launch one of our locations. And then after launching one of our locations, he did such a great job with that. We gave him oversight for all of our community pastors, our campus pastors. And then after that, we had him join our lead team. And then he stepped into this role of lead pastor apprentice. So the culture kind of almost made him. And it would be, I think I kind of got the benefit it was obvious it was him. I got the benefit by the apprenticing of the last part, but everybody else apprenticed him before that. So I think one of the warning signs if there's not apprentices. Another warning sign is when, well, you look around, quite frankly, and um, there's too many, I'll just say it the way it is. There's too many old white guys in the room. I mean, if there's not some women there, okay, we've just eliminated 50% of the population. 50% of our leadership potential. I mean, it's a tragedy. And quite frankly, I don't care about your theology on it. Most everybody believes that women ought to be leading at some level. And if you're looking around the room and there's not women in the room, that's a problem. If you're also looking around the room and there's not some diversity, that's also a huge problem, because guess what? In the future, there's going to be a lot of women, and the future in our country, it's going to get increasingly diverse. So I think those places where there's not apprenticeship happening, there's not that kind of permission giving, and you don't see, diverse people at the table, those are huge warning signs.
Yeah. Diverse people bring diverse thought, and diverse thought is just as important as anything, Dave, because that's the only way the mission grows and the vision grows. And I'm often saying these days, the most powerful statement we can make as leaders is, I don't know what to do next.
Yeah,
Because that's when new idea is unleashed. So often as leaders, we think we have to have the answer. The power is when we admit that we don't. And
that's
you've
good.
already just said, Dave, that a little bit about identifying future leaders. What are some big things that we're missing from how we're developing future leaders?
I think we need to take more risks.
Mm.
I think we take more, and I think if you start at like what we've tried to do with whatever you call them, small groups, missional communities, LTG, whatever you call them, that is a great place to take a lot of leadership risks on a lot of people. And if
Mm.
they prove themselves to have the gifts and faithfulness, then you can kind of constantly promote them and give them more and more opportunities. But I think not taking risks on people, and I think fear. There's a lot of fear, and I think in a lot of leaders, I'm not sure where that comes from, but that's not good.
Yeah. I see, Dave, how excited you are about the next generation of leaders. What gives you hope about raising up this next generation?
Well, a couple things. I think particular individual people that I'm interacting with that are young people who have brilliantly creative, innovative, exciting ideas about how to lead the church in the future. I'm thinking about Molly, who's the lead pastor at the Brook Church in Denver, and she recognized that Denver was the third, she said, I don't know where the research came from, third loneliest city in the country, and began to use social media to create meetups. And from those meetups, she began to form simple churches. And I think she's 4 or 5 years into it now. And there's like more than 50 simple churches, more than 500 people. And it's a whole new form, a whole new expression of church that she's created. Or I'm thinking about Mimi Chan, who I met at our Exponential West last year, came up to me. You could tell she's up to something. And the more you had to kind of pry it out of her. And she talked about how there are now, what did she say, 40? I forgot what she even called them, but 40 different kinds of 40 different kinds of groups that are meeting. And she works for Amazon. 40
Mm.
different 40 different groups that are more than 2,000 people. And I said, and she began to explain these groups that are meeting, around the Bible, around advancing Jesus' mission. I said, these are churches, right? And she said, well, I guess you could call them that. And I said, hold, so you got 40 of these and 2,000 people. I said, this is amazing. And I mean, those kind of things inspire me, that's are happening and happening through young people.
Yeah. Talk about, Dave, this is something I've observed just from the work that you're doing and the conversations we've had.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about the power of networks. We've got a lot of leaders listening. Some are running in their lanes. Some are opening up their thought to how can we partner beyond this, whether you be a ministry nonprofit, a church, an independent church or a denominational church, whatever lane. Talk about the power of networks, because I haven't seen anybody unleash that power like Dave Ferguson.
Well, that's kind of you to say, but I hope we're barely getting started on this, because I do think I'll go back to a conversation I had with a guy named Sam Stevens, who's the president of the India Gospel League. Sam has, and again, we have to go to other places of the world if we really want to see movement, understand movement. Sam, as the president of the Gospel League, at that point in time, I had helped plant more than 100,000 churches, a staggering number. So we're talking about networks, and he looks at me and just kind of matter-of-factly says, "Oh, Dave, networks are the backbone to movement." And he began to explain the infrastructure of what they've done. You go, how in the world do you get to 100,000 church plants? The infrastructure was based on network principles. And we began to take that and we applied it in New Thing. And over, a decade, then we helped plant over 25,000 churches in 69 countries. Now, I think that's one of the things we've got to do here in the United States. We have over 330 cities that have 100,000 or more people in population. I would love to see multiple networks in at least those cities to start with. And what I mean by that is 4 to 6 lead pastors, 4 to 6 churches coming together to say, hey, how can we do something together that we couldn't do on our own around church planting? And the two things that we consistently see happen when these networks get formed, and the best I've seen so far is that number of 4 to 6. This feels very scalable and economically feasible. Two things, good things happen. One is the leaders get healthier because basically, if they're getting together like monthly, having lunch, having breakfast, they're just becoming friends. And when you got friends on mission, I mean, you're sharing, hey, here's what's going on in my home, and this is hard. Here's what's happening at church. This is a struggle. I mean, you're getting each other through all the stuff you got to get through. So you got healthier leaders. But the second thing, we saw this through New Thing, they multiplied more churches because I think just by every month getting together, they were holding each other accountable for doing the things they said they wanted to do. So at Exponential, we talk about the 16% mission. We would like to see 16% of all the churches in the United States be reproducing or multiplying. We feel like a key part of that is we need 60,000 churches. That's approximately 16%. But what we really need to think in terms of 12,000 networks. If we get 12,000 networks, that's a game changer. That'll change everything.
It becomes exponential.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Dave, between New Thing, which is now Exponential, and Community Christian, you've got a front row seat to the local church, national conversations, ministry organizations, global movements. What are you learning right now that's shaping your future leadership?
In the role that I've had with Exponential and New Thing, and I hope I say this with humility, there's sometimes I look at the state of the church in the United States and the number of churches that have been planted, and I sometimes go like, because I'm concerned about it, I'll go like, oh, did I help create that? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Does it really?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So it's kind of because what I see out there is not everything's good. And in fact, do we have time for a quick story here?
Please.
Okay, so I'm meeting with one of the leading CMOs on the West Coast. I met him through a buddy who's just connected that way, and I want to tell a better story about church planting because it feels like I can't get people as motivated in local churches as I'd like. And so I'm asking this guy who's a brilliant guy in marketing, hey, how do I tell a better story about planting more churches? And then he says to me, well, what kind of churches? And then he says, are you talking about the kind of church that I read about in the newspaper that have abused women or children, the church leaders have? Are you talking about the kind of churches, large churches that have toxic culture and have taken advantage of people financially? And then he turns to the corner and he says, or are you talking about the kind of church that helped my brother get sober? Or are you talking about the kind of church that my niece and nephew found belonging when they were teenagers and really just changed the trajectory of their life? Which kind of church are you talking about? And then he says to me, what you don't get, Dave, you're so close to it, is that you have to figure out what kind of church. People are asking what kind of church. And he said, because churches are both, this is what he really hurt. He said, churches are both the problem and the solution.
Yeah.
And then he turned a phrase and he said, it's kind of like churches are both the arsonist and the firefighter. And he said, which kind of church? And so I think the thing that I feel like I'm learning is I not only want to plant more churches, but I want to plant better churches. And I think part of the way of better church, we need healthier leaders. I think if we have healthier leaders, that'll lead to healthier churches. And so I don't really want to give up on the more, because as like, most of our conversation, I love this whole conversation of movement making and scaling, but I also want healthier leaders and healthier churches. So I really am not going to be content with more of the same. I think we got to do more and better.
Yeah. That in and of itself, Dave, is a remarkable mission and vision. And I go back to when you spoke moments ago about language and story. And we're obviously at Slingshot, we're all about healthy teams to accomplish remarkable missions. And we've got to call leaders, healthy leaders, to a more beautiful story of how to continue to multiply the gospel across the face of the earth. The work that you do, Dave, is so inspiring. This conversation has been inspiring. I hope we get to have another one real soon.
I hope we have one in person.
Yes, please. I wish we were recording this in person. How do people get connected to the work of Exponential, resources, your books, all of that?
Yep. You can go to exponential.org. We'd love to have you join you at any of our conferences or any of our experiences. If you want to visit my website at daveferguson.org, or if you want to email me, daveferguson@exponential.org, however I can help.
Yeah. And you do. I remember that when we were last together, Dave, you looked me in the eye and you said, Tim, how can I help you? You are all about helping people stay on mission and achieving the mission that God has for them. Thank you for the amazing work you do. And this has been a powerful and timely conversation. Thank you for sharing your heart, your story, your leadership lessons, so many things for our listeners to take away today. I'm just thinking more about calling out gifting in other leaders. Who's next? Building the bench. You talking about apprenticeships and networks. So many things for us to take away today. And if you enjoyed today's episode listening, be sure to subscribe and share it with another leader. And until next time, stay curious and reach for the remarkable.